No, but legitimately, I believe that this is a scope that's going to really help a lot of those that are senior pastors, that really want to understand the dynamics of their sons and daughters in their house and how to best serve them and go through the different seasons with them, especially when you're called to them for life.
Yeah.
That's a different thing when you're called to mentor them for a season, and then when you're called to go with them through life. Because I believe that the reason why we have such lack of true sons is because of the lack of understanding for fathers to truly understand how to go through seasons with them. So, senior pastors, get ready. But those of you that are sons and daughters as well, get ready for true clarity on what you don't know about sonship.
Yeah, because there's a lot you don't know. And those y'all running around here talking about y'all people's daddies and mamas and all that stuff, you have no clue what
you're asking for.
Just no, you just don't know. All right, so let's don't be sorry. You released. So let me give you this. There go Apostle Sherman. I knew he was gonna show up.
Hey, Apostle Sherman. This
Apostle Sherman
right
Dumas. He's a real son. He's the author of the book Bastard Nation. Go find it on Amazon.com and purchase it immediately. So here is our preface. Our preface is that don't use what you hear tonight as a template for how this is going to work for you in your life. And don't hear what we talk about and make it automatically fit to your particular story and your particular availability and all of that stuff. So this is not a template, but we want you to get some wisdom and to pull some principles that may help you. I think the best way to put it is posture your heart the right way to have impartation from a source that God may send you. I think what we're going to talk about is what happens to and in and for and around the heart. So your story does not have to be our story.
Absolutely. And for each one of 583 of you, the goal is that you must understand that when Christ came into the earth, the first thing he did was that he got disciples. And when he got those disciples, he looked at them and said, I'm going to make you. So the thing is, the goal of sonship is to be made and to be formed. And that should be the heart posture of every single person that desires to do anything for God. So let's do it.
Yeah. All right. If y'all ready, give me some thumbs. I just want to make sure y'all engaged. Come on. Give me some thumbs. Give me some thumbs for some wisdom. You about to get wisdom.
Woo!
Good.
Thank you, Holy Spirit.
Oh, Timotheus, I feel so bad for you. I've been getting him for the last 2 days. It's okay. All right. So y'all ready? Y'all ready? Y'all ready? All right. So I'm going to...
This is our story. It's like a movie. So I hope y'all are ready for this. I mean, we're going to take you through happiness, through tears, through ups. You're going to be upset. You're going to be mad at me. You're going to be mad at him in some parts of it. You're going and then you're going to come to the conclusion of us together right now. So you know the story ends well.
Yeah, it ends well. All right. And Emery Diggs said the last one was like a movie. Yeah, all of my journeys with people I relate to are their movie-like journeys. All right. So in the beginning was Jamal Miller.
So at the age of I'm from Monroe, Louisiana. Okay, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. We moved to Monroe, Louisiana when I was about 7 years old. I came from a semi-Christian home. My dad wasn't into church. My mom was. I was not your normal average kid at all. Never was. But around the age of 16, I was involved in a very toxic relationship with a young lady. That relationship one night, at this point, there was no Netflix and chill. It was VHS and chill. And so, she's over at the house, and I was supposed to be helping her set up her website, and things began to progress. And I remember at this point, the Holy Spirit gives me like an epiphany moment, an awakening, and it says to me, Jamal, if you compromise now, you will compromise for the rest of your life. And at that point, I kicked the girl out, and I said, hey, I can't do this. This is not me. And I get on my face before God, and I said, God, I don't know what you have in store for me, but I'm giving you 365 days that I'm going to be committed to you. And that's what the Lord asked me for 1 year, and I'm still here. And so I give my life to the Lord very radically. I get set on fire for him. And at this point, I'm about 16 years old. And during this time, I go after him. I started Bible study in my high school, became very well known, seeing hundreds of people saved in my high school. And I knew that the Lord was calling me to ministry. And at my this is kind of where I began to become one of those like super radical ones, carrying my Bible to high school every day. I was a weird one. I was prophesying to everyone. I started having dreams and visions. I was in a very strong, for about 5 years, I went through a strong season of visitation. And at this point, a missionary in my church, because at this point I was like, man, I'm called to be an evangelist. I'm about to travel the world. I'm an evangelist. All I want to do is win souls. And a lady in my church comes to my mom, has a missionary, sits down with her and says to her, hey, I wanted to come to you as Jamal's spiritual head, and I want to tell you that Jamal is called to have an apostolic ministry, and he's going to be connected to many apostolic leaders that are going, and there's a strong prophecy about apostolic. I had never heard of an apostle. I didn't know what apostolic was. I knew I was flowing in the prophetic, but I didn't know apostles even existed. And so the first thing I did was I Googled apostle, modern day apostles. And I Googled that, like literally 16 years old, I Googled modern day apostles.
Google, right?
One of the third things that popped up, many of you probably are aware is Crusaders Ministry,
yeah.
John Eckhart. So I go to his website and I just start exploring everything. I buy all of his books. I bought every book on the apostolic. I mean, I just went in deep. And as I'm reading all these books, I'm like, this is me. This is me. I began to just read pages about my personality, my upbringing, the challenges. At 16, I just began to just say, oh my gosh. But one of the earmarks, one of the most glaring qualities and necessary things that every person desired to be in the apostolic or to be apostolic in any way was they needed someone to father them. And I was like, man, what is that? What is this? Like, where do I get that from? You know what I'm saying? My dad wasn't into church, so I had no idea. So I began to go to the Lord for it. I'd be like, God, I need a father. I need someone. And so I just turned to my youth pastor. And honestly, my youth pastor had no idea what I was even talking about. He did his best, and he ended up hurting me in some other ways. But long story short, what ends up happening is I end up going back to John Eckhart's website, and I see an article, and the article was called "Generational Misidentification," written by your very own Dr. Matthew L. Stevenson. I read this article, and it was like reading my life. Like, he talked about there are people in churches that are being misidentified, that are being said that they are one thing, but you're truly not that thing, and you're being limited to something, and truly there's a lot more in you. And as I'm reading these pages, I never email anyone. I never say anything to anyone. I'm in Louisiana, 16-year-old kid. I email him. I just felt moved to email him. And I said, hey, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're from. I just want to just say thank you for writing this article. And what happened whenever you got my first email?
Now, we have to connect the pieces to this. So
Okay.
here's the deal. A lot of you that follow me on Periscope or that have heard of me in the last year or so think I just appeared. But at my church will be 11 years old next year, and I've been preaching. What is this? 16. I started preaching in 1999. So if this is 2016, what is that?
What is that, 7?
Almost 17 years?
That's crazy.
The blood of Jesus. So
Is the article still available?
Is the article? You know what? If Apostle Johnny updated that site, it might be. Anyway, so I've been preaching for a minute. So I said that to say this. At the time that Pastor Jamal emailed me, I was used to getting people reach out, and a lot of people. Apostle Sherman, I bind you. A lot of people would reach out to me, kind of how I get today. And so I have developed a policy over the last 16 years almost that I'm very limited with how I interact with people that I don't know online. I mean, it frustrates people. It makes them angry, but I never wanted my character to be incriminated by engaging with people that I didn't know, and they could say I said something I didn't say or imply that we were connected. So I'm very watchful with that stuff. So seldom do I ever reply, do I ever interact with people that I don't know. However, and at this time, what's the best way to say this? I was personality-wise,
Were you a lot?
I was a lot more unrefined, is what I'll say.
I mean, he was cutthroat. I mean, in the way like a lot more just. I mean, You are a lot more pastoral at this point, at this juncture.
Yeah, at this point, I have a stronger father's heart, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
But when he emailed me, I was a brute, reckless, ruthless, abrasive prophet who didn't care about feelings, didn't care about history. Yeah, I was worse.
Is it more cutthroat than now?
Yeah, I promise you. If you ask
Y'all,
anybody,
I'm serious. I'm gonna tell y'all the story of my first. Okay.
I was really. I mean, I was rude. Now I'm straightforward now, and I'm blunt. I'm abrasive, but it was bad. I mean, yeah, it was really bad. And so when I saw his email, I still have the email actually somewhere. When I saw it, I responded and I said something like, "Thanks very much for reading it." Something along like it was a one-liner because I wasn't gonna give him too much.
He said, "If you have any other questions,
yeah. I said, if you have
email me back."
Yeah, I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach back. So
don't
that
say that to somebody that is just meeting someone for the first time that might understand him.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when he responded back saying, "Hey, if you have any other questions, you can email me back." Well, that next email, I give him I give him the whole breakdown of what's happening with me, what the Lord is showing me, the things that I'm seeing in prayer, things that are happening in my day, the Bible. I'm telling him my whole story. How did you respond back next? How did we get on the phone?
I don't remember, but I do know that at that point, how the relationship began was access. We did not start with definition.
Mm-mm.
That is a powerful first principle.
We did not start with any definition. It was
access.
He asked me. He just said, "Hey." So eventually it progressed to a phone call.
Right.
To the phone call, I had no idea. Y'all listen to me. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I have no idea who this man is. I don't know what he's doing in Chicago. Right. I didn't know he was a pastor. Like, I was just following the Holy Spirit. And we get on the phone. He's like, "So, yeah, what do you need from me?"
That is such a me question. What are we doing?
What are we doing? What do you need from me? And I said, "Well, I don't really know this whole apostolic stuff."
Right. At first, it was strictly based on your call.
Yep. And I said, "I just need someone that can kind of maybe help me along. I know I'm called to do some pretty crazy things. I just need somebody that would willing to help me."
So at this point, I am pastoring. I had just started the framework for my network at that time, with the first levels of it. And so I had a lot of responsibility and people I was invested in and stuff I was doing in Chicago. So I was not without work, and I was actually working. I think at that point, I was actually in the educational system.
Yep, you were teaching.
I had my career going, so I was not without people to pour into, and over time, so he's in Louisiana, I'm in Chicago, and the first major decision that he called me on was where he was going to go to college.
Yep.
Now, this is so unlike me because I have a I'm trying to say this and not look bad. I have a very interesting attention span. So you have a window of time to keep my attention.
You operate by burdens. Would you
right.
say that?
Yeah, very true. Like, I have to really be gripped by something in order to help a 16-year-old think about where to go to college. I wasn't at that point. I was too focused on what I was doing. So,
and what he said whenever I was like, "Hey, so I feel like the Lord's calling me to go to Christ for the Nations in CFNI. It's a Bible college." And he knew about the Bible college.
No. You were contemplating going to
there or ULM,
yeah,
in my local college, and this is what he says to me. He's like, "Yeah, I think it'd be good, but they're not gonna really give you a language for who you are, and they're not gonna really give you any depth, but I think it'd be a good thing." And I was like, "Okay."
So at this point, wisdom is, even if I know the answer prophetically,
yeah,
I never, before I had official authority in his life, I never just outright said, "Here is the word of the Lord. Do this, do this." And there's probably about 20 things in our story that I knew the outcome of, or that I saw the outcome of, and allowed him the option to do it without putting pressure on it. I think prior to us having an authority, because authority flows from definition. Once we defined it, then our relationship. First trip.
Wow.
First trip.
So
we walked through where to go to college.
And that's when there was a young lady that I believe was the Lord's revelation of, that was my wife. That was the first. And
Hold on.
and yeah.
Okay.
And then so, I said that one. Okay. So from there, he kind of walked with me through that, and it would begin to kind of just form where I would kind of just go to him for certain things, certain guidings.
Right.
But then I was kind of, we fast forward. How often we talk? We didn't talk much.
Maybe once a month, I think.
Yeah, like once a month. I was very, very fearful and also very cautious, very slow in identifying him that he was my spiritual father. I didn't tell anyone about him. I wasn't talking about him. Like, I was very, very cautious about it. And so
and I didn't impose those definitions on him either. We just talked.
Yeah. And so it kind of got to a place where he never forced it, we just kind of casually went. And then we want to skip to CFNI.
So after how do we walk through because the girl thing was pretty major. That was the thing. And then at CFNI, so he ends up going to college and going to the school, and he gets a lot of influence there, starts going into ministry, preaching, and all of this stuff.
So I become a pastor about 19 years old. I entered into my first youth ministry role, and I remember him giving me insight about that. He was like, "What did you say about that first youth ministry role?" I mean, like he did not like it at all. He was at the same thing, and whenever he didn't like something, he still did not control or manipulate or force. Right. He just simply would give, "Hey, I think it's, you're going to learn a lot." And I was like, okay. So I went through that. Ended up getting partnered up with a church where the pastor was hurt tremendously, and I ended up getting fired within a year from this church. I got fired. I mean, if I told you,
tell you were going to get fired?
You didn't tell me.
Oh.
You told me something was going to happen, that it was going to teach me a lesson.
Oh, okay.
Ended up getting fired from this church, and at this point, when did I go to Chicago for the first time? Was it before?
So at this point, our hearts are attempting to tie, but have not made a complete knot yet. Right. Well, at least on his end. Mm-hmm. But by this journey, so he's 19 now, so that's 3 years of relating.
We haven't seen each other face to face.
And there was no FaceTime.
No FaceTime. So when I get to CFNI, he says, "Hey, I want you to come to Chicago. We're gonna, want you to come preach for our youth conference for World Changer Summit 2000 and
something." But by this point, I know who he is. And what I'm supposed to do and be in his life. But that was never something that I called him out on. There was never something that we never even talked about it pre him coming up here. I just said, "Hey, I want you to come preach for me. I'm having my conference. Let's see how that works."
So this is my first trip. I bring a good friend of mine, Colin Johnson, with me, and I had nothing, y'all. I had no idea. Now remember, I'm coming from a very strong, charismatic, spirit-filled, prophetic background. I get to Chicago. They treat me like I am. Bishop Jakes. They pick me up in a limo. They put me in a high-rise hotel downtown. Their friend looks like, yeah. They're talking about. Are you talking about Colin or they just is there somebody that's being a troll? And so from there, they put me, so I come to Chicago, and I remember the first night, I'm about to see Apostle for the first time, and I come down these stairs, I go into it at Altgeld, and I walk up these stairs, and I see him for the first time, and he's smiling at me like he's seen his. What was going through your mind when you saw me? For me, I can't even. It had no words. It was like I didn't know what to do. And so I'm a very, 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 guarded at this time, very guarded person.
And I am extremely invasive. So between him being guarded and my being invasive and moving him in this direction, it was very, very, very an interesting dynamic. Did I grab you or what did I do?
He just stared at me. All right, guys. He stared at me. He just was like...
Would you quit it?
Sorry. At this point, World Changer Summit, this is 2000. This is like, we were in Altgeld. We weren't in any big center. We were probably maybe, what you say, how many people were at World Changer Summit? Maybe 100 people there. And y'all, people always ask me this question. how did when he prophesied, has his prophesying like matured or grew? Like, guys, I'm telling you, he was reading people's diaries at this point.
This chump. Hey, Black Lives Matter.
Oh Lord. And so I remember him when for the first time he preached one night, and when he preached, I mean, it was like he was, I mean, ain't nothing like I heard before. And then he went into prophetic ministry, and he pulled out one young lady, and he says, "I'm reading your diary right now, and the date is September 3rd," and all you hear is the whole row, and then he starts, and I'm like looking like, this
is your first encounter.
First encounter. For 3 years, we've been talking on the phone. He's never prophesied to me.
Yeah.
He's never gave me a word of knowledge. He's never gave me a word of nothing. He ain't gave me nothing.
Right.
We just been talking on the phone.
Right.
So then I see this man over here reading somebody's diary, and I'm like, who are you? Like, what? And where have you come from? And so I remember just at that point, my friend Colin like walked out.
He was scared.
My friend Colin walked out, and he had to go for a walk. He was like, "This is just too much." And I remember just all the prophets started lining up, and everybody just started prophesying. And then it just turned into, once he got done preaching, and after prophetic ministry, they did deliverance, and it turned into my terminology, and my interpretation of it. It was a murder scene. All right, guys, it was a murder scene.
Bodies everywhere.
They went. Reese turned up, and all you hear is he's walking chairs, he's grabbing heads. I'm like. I mean, what? I mean, and then all I know, within like 20 minutes, he starts twirling his suit coat, and his suit coat is spinning, and he throws it over me, and grabs my head, and just starts prophesying. And so I'm under this suit coat, and guys, don't mind you, I'm very spiritual, but at this point, I was so like, I'm under this coat, and I'm like. I'm like, what do I do?
I cannot.
And so he's got a jacket over me, and I really had no idea what to do. I was like, what does this mean? So nobody can see me. My face is super hidden from everybody. And so I'm like, well, I mean, I'm going to just lift my hands and let me just act like I'm receiving, because I don't know what's going on. I really didn't. And so at that point, when I went home, I preached the next day. I preached for the youth, and I wasn't nervous, but I can tell the pressure and the weight of God's glory was so different. Mm-hmm. And I could tell that this was a place that my grace was...
It was flourishing.
Going to flourish. It was in a way, because I remember called out somebody and prophetically, and I told him that he was a liar. Mm-hmm. And I remember other prophet was like, that's your son. And I was like, huh?
Right.
And the Lord spoke to me, and I was like, God, this is so beyond anything I've ever seen. And at that point, he says, where I'm taking him, you're going with him. Everything that he's going to do, you will do in half the time if you submit yourself to him and go where I'm taking him. And because at this point, guys, the church was, it was very small. Yeah, the World Changers Summit was small. Everything was very at a beginning level, in a beginning place. And he says, where I'm taking him, I'm calling you to go with him. Attach yourself to him. And because if it wasn't for God, that word at that moment, I probably would have ran.
Yeah.
Because it was just so much. And I remember, so I left. We didn't even have did we have a brief call?
No,
so we go.
A debrief?
Yeah, we didn't have a debrief. Mm-mm. I go back to Dallas. And at that point, I knew that this man was called to be my spiritual father. But we did not talk about it until, I would say, another year.
I don't even remember how it came up.
The second time that I was going to come to Chicago. So he invited me back the second year, another year.
So a year goes past, and we still have not done the definition conversation. Mm-mm. We're just relating without pressure, without expectation, finding out what's going on in his world and his life. At this point, I know what's up, and I am aware of who he is to me and what's going on. I just, we just build, and we build. Because for me, I don't think you can abruptly and just enter into definitions like that. That's why a lot of us are screwed up now, is because you meet somebody in 30 minutes, and even if you feel like you know who they are, you just quickly put yourself under those terms without having to develop the full tie and a knot in that heart yet. So that takes time to do.
So he ends up sending me a book called You Have Not Many Fathers by Dr. Rick Hanby.
Mark Hanby.
Mark Hanby. Jesus. Mark Hanby. You have not
had
many
that
fathers.
Conversation at
And he-
that point.
I don't remember a definite conversation.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember we just evolved.
Okay.
Cause I mean, and so at this point, once I get I end up entering into a very high position at my school the last year, and at that point, I'm in a relationship with a young lady, and I kind of began to do a lot of things. I still didn't know how to be with him, but at the same token, I knew 100% that I would not become what I was called to be without him. Like, I knew I could not let go of him. I knew I needed him. And so it was very clear to me, very apparent to me. I remember just even at this point, anytime he would call, I would run out of class. If he called, I would stop work.
Friends at this point.
I mean, all my friends knew who he was. So I mean, he became a very, very strong person in my life. But still, people didn't know in my world who he was or what All Nations was.
Right.
People were still very judgmental, very critical. They were like, "Who is this guy? And where is he coming from? And who is he with? Who is he connected to?" And and for this point in my life, I was already being being prepared, branded to kind of be this mega church mogul in the contemporary church world.
Right.
They were already setting me up with youth ministry positions, and I remember saying to him one day, I said, "Please do not let me become that." And
now that's going to be vitally important for y'all to remember in a minute for this story. One of our first knots in our heart was developed when he asked me and begged me not to let him become what that world, that evangelical Christian playboy, pretty preacher, grow your church in 2-year thing. And
7 steps to church growth.
Yeah, that thing. And he asked me, he said, "Please don't let me ever become that." That was not number 2.
I knew that American ministry would be my Egypt. And I knew that would be a place of bondage. It would be a place of limitation. Wow, I feel God. It would be a place. It would be a place of just trapping me to contain me with a good thing versus giving me the God thing. And I had a full insight into it. I would even tell people, and I would say, "Man, I'm going to be a missionary because I can't be a pastor in America. I won't be a pastor in America because pastors in America, they dry. They ain't got no power. They ain't got no anointing."
Oh, because you was a rap kid at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I was radical. I was like, I'll never become that. I was super against it. And I said, I got a spiritual father. They moving in signs and wonders and miracles in Chicago. And I would talk about it like they prophesying, they casting out devils. I said, that's what I'm going to become. That's where God's destined me to be. But I still had this itch in me, like this thing in me I knew I was called to judge that. And so from there, I go to Chicago again another year, and when I go to another year, I end up planning the whole youth conference alongside the present youth pastor, which was Brenda Rogers. I ended up planning the youth conference alongside her. I brought a whole team with me from Dallas. I brought a whole worship team. We had a whole van that we took. No, they drove and I flew. So we did a whole youth conference, and when I went there, that's when I felt the weight that I needed to be there.
Yeah.
And so he says to me.
You tell him.
He says to me, hey, he calls me, and you can tell him. I mean.
So I call him. This is after World Changes, right?
Yep.
And I say, hey, I really feel like it's time for you to come and spend this next season of your life with me. And I'm seeing what's going on, and I think it's just appropriate that for me to do life on life with you, that you need to be up here for your next level and where you're going. So pray about it. No pressure. Go and ask God, and let's talk about it.
So when he said it, he didn't have to ask me twice. I knew it was the Lord already, and I said, yeah, I agree. I need to come. I had no family. I had no friends.
Nobody in Chicago.
I had no one. I didn't know anybody in Chicago. I was going strictly, I have videos on YouTube of my transition. It was the hardest transition because it was simply something that was so new. Yeah. My family didn't understand it. Right. My friends didn't understand it. Even some of the pastors that I was connected to in Dallas were like, where are you going? What are you doing? This church wants you. This church wants you. They're willing to pay you $50, $60. What do you want? You name your salary. Because of the position I had in my school, I just had a very open access door to a lot of opportunities, good opportunities. I turned all of them down. And I came to Chicago, and I knew that this was a connection point for my destiny. And so I get to Chicago.
That's when we actually had the first definition, talk, expectation thing. So when he gets here, he moves in. He gets an apartment, and we put him on staff. He's in the hood. Like, he went from where the green was grass to where nobody spoke English when he moved here. And I went to pick him up one day, and I took him out to get some pie.
Yep.
And I said, okay, so you're here.
And I'm ready to have like a youth ministry meeting.
He's trying to plan a youth department.
I'm over here like, so what are your expectations? What do you need from me? What do you know?
He asked me, what's my office hour?
What are your office hours? What are your goals? What do you want to see accomplished in the next year, in 5 years, and 7 years, and how many students you want to have in the ministry? I'm programmed, guys. I'm programmed. I've been through ministry school.
Yeah.
So my programming was just ministry, just grow church. That's it. That's all I had. And he's like, yeah. So let's talk about you.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean?
Completely disarmed him. Just completely disarmed him. I was like, you're not here to learn how to be a youth pastor. You learned that at CFNI. They gave you those skills to make that work by yourself. So do what you were trying to do. On other news, let's deal with you.
So we go through, basically, guys, I'm the youth pastor, and I'm doing that job. But I knew that that was just simply just a, what would you call it? Like a way to just...
A door, a threshold.
A place of authority.
It was a hook.
A hook to kind of get me, and one day he says to me, and I'll never forget this moment, and this is probably the one time that I can say that he did give me some insight, that he knew more than I knew about myself. He said, there are some things about you that are soon to be discovered, and I believe that you are called at some points to do some things greater than I. And I'm called to do a lot of stuff. And so brace yourself. And I was like, okay. And at that point, I was like, God, I don't know what it is. And that's when I had full confirmation to let go and trust him. Because I knew this man had insight about my life. And that he felt called and responsible. That's a key word. Mm-hmm. He felt responsible to see me make it to my expected end. He felt responsible to walk alongside me to get to that place. So I knew that I didn't have to manipulate. I didn't have to beg. I didn't have to do anything.
You didn't have to impress.
Impress.
Yeah.
I just simply had to be open, have a heart. And I don't know, and just kind of go through it. So once we get to that place, but my thing is, I still didn't know what a son was, or what I'm looking at a son as a person that comes and works for you.
Right.
And that thing is what ends up, so let's go ahead and go into basically.
So throughout this, so he's here. We've developed a basic framework for our interaction. We get very close. And he starts to let all of his fears out. I start to learn all of the nuances of his wars, his history, his journey, where he had been, stuff that had happened to him, all of that stuff. And that was very important because a lot of that stuff would become the weapon I needed to be who I needed to be to and for him. Without that information, you really don't have a real father, son, mentor, nothing. Without those types of details about stuff that's either dark or stuff that's after competing for you or contending for who you're going to be. If that man or that woman or that relationship is not aware of what's after you or what's competing for your purpose, then what you have is not what you think it really is. So we developed that relationship. Information came out, decisions came out, and at this point I've developed more confidence to use my authority in his life by warning him about certain relationships, mm-hmm. and about giving him discernment about certain things to teach him how to see things and how to recognize right and wrong relationships and all of that stuff. And so I think we just did really, really, really good, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
We just grew, and our relationship became one that many people were inspired by. My life, I had a lot of credibility, and a lot of just true, genuine grace.
His friends started relating to me like I was adopted dad or something. All the people that graduated with him, because they're like, okay, whatever this is that you got.
They begin to see the fruit from my life.
Right.
And you know how thing is with people, if they see something working for you, they're gonna want what is it? And for me, my answer was You need someone.
For one season, that was all you were singing.
That's all I
was the
said.
only
People
song
come
you
to me
had.
and be like, man, God ain't speaking to me. I be like, where's your spiritual father? Man, I can't read. I can't hear. People be like, man, I just feel
What's
so
next,
dry,
man?
or I don't know what to do next, or I don't know where to go. I don't know what God's calling me to do. And I be like, well, who you submitted to?
Right.
Who you submitted to? Who you submitted to? Are you submitted? Are you trying to do things? Are you trying to do things by yourself? Or is it just you and God? You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
if it's just you and God, that's not how He ordained it. God is a God of order. And what we see is in the moment, in every single point of history, is that when God gives a person a call, He usually attaches them to a person. And so we see it with the disciples. We see it with Apostle Paul. I mean, even for him, the moment that his eyes were open, a person was assigned to him to come help him in that moment. Now, everybody has different seasons when it comes to certain people, but my thing is who are you submitted to? So I began to preach this. This began to be my gospel. I mean, my thing is because I saw
only
so
thing you were
much
preaching.
fruit come forth out of my submission to this man and to his house and to what he was doing, to everything he was. And I knew that, man, this is the answer. And so from there, I ended up about a year later. At this point, y'all got some of my hair. At this point, I was super thirsty. Not thirsty. No, I was just very, very.
He wanted a woman.
Yeah, I was ready.
And he's a man with male parts. He needed a woman.
So I was like, Lord, I've been faithful to you.
But I was very protective over him. I knew that where he was going and who he was, that he would never lack options with women because, unfortunately, in our tradition, women are programmed to want preachers or men with position. And so because of where he was headed, I had an eye for them women. And I don't think I liked none of them until Natasha.
No, he didn't like any of them. So I would present someone to him, and when he said no or said if he hesitated, I would, cancel. And so, but there was, I wasn't perfect, y'all. I did end up in a relationship where it was a very emotional relationship, or, a soul tie. And I remember the night that I was over at his house, and he just looks at me. He's like, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Why do you let this woman in so deep, but you know there's no future?" Mm-hmm. And he just reaches over on the couch and says, "I break this soul tie in Jesus' name." And I remember just like, for the first time, I had my deliverance moment. And when I let go of that, within that next, I would say I wrote an article on, making room for the new. And I knew that something had released in that moment. And in my first year mark on the red couch. So from the first, my first year anniversary in Chicago, one of our mothers in the church, Dr. Emma, grabs my hand and she says, "Jamal, I don't know what has happened, but something has broken in the spirit, and your wife is coming in a way that you would never expect." And I'm like, "Well, Jesus,
Send the woman of God.
Come on, Lord." I get stopped in the hallway. One of our prophets, "Pastor Jamal?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's up, prophetess?" And she's like, "I don't know what it is, but your wife is coming." And I was like, "Okay, this is 2. At this point, at number 2, I began to set money aside prophetically for the ring. I'm like, "God, I'm going to respond to this by faith." And I began to set money aside. And I remember the third one came from Apostle K. Apostle K has a dream. And
sure did.
Apostle, he calls me up, "Hey, Bishop, hey, my wife had a dream about your wife." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Come over to the house." And so I come over to the house, and he's like, we start talking. He's like, "Yeah, I don't remember the dream." Basically, the dream was like, the main thing was,
we knew she would be older than you, and we knew she would be called to prayer.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. And you said, "I think there's this girl."
Yeah, he asked me, he's like, "Is there anyone in your life?" And I said, "Nope." "Is there anyone at all?" And at that point, when he said anyone at all, I was like, "You know what?" So I was like, there was a young lady that I had messaged about a year back, 9 months back. And I remember I messaged her because I wanted to know I saw her post on Facebook, and I didn't know who she was. And I thought I knew her, messaged her to find out if I knew her, and we actually didn't know each other. And we began to correspond on Facebook. Many of you probably have heard this story. And so we were complete strangers, everybody. And at this point, whenever I'm at Apostle's house, I'm like, "Man, there's a girl that I messaged on Facebook." And he's like, "Okay." And I said, "But man, she lives in California. I don't know her." And he's like, "Show me a picture of her." So I pull her up on Facebook. And he's like, "Jamal, she's gorgeous." And I was like, "I know, Bishop, she's gorgeous, but I think she's taller than me. And I was like,
Oh, he sure did.
and I said, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? What if she's taller than me? Man, we can get to know each other and we may meet and she's 6'6" and I just can't do this, man. I'm not doing it. He's like, so he called, he's like, babe, we found Jamal's wife. And like, so she comes downstairs into the same spot. And so she's like, oh my God, no, Jamal, she's not taller than you.
Yeah.
She's not taller than you. And at this point, so he's like, he tells me, he's like, baby Bishop, message her again. And I want you to ask her to get to know each other better. You have nothing to lose. He's our spiritual father. He's never done this before. Never.
The one before this one, I was just not nice at all about that one.
Never. He never done anything like this before. So I messaged her the next day, and I'm like, hey, I don't do this often. This is not normal. But over the last 8 months of just seeing your posts on Facebook and seeing what you're doing on
She
Twitter.
had her own ministry at that time.
She had a ministry. She was doing some things there called Romance Me Ministry. She was doing some pretty amazing things. I was very much inspired. And I said, hey, some of the things that you're doing, it seems like you're doing some awesome stuff. I've got approval from my spiritual father. And I want to see if you're interested in getting to know one another better. And I put that out there, too, where I've never done anything like this, y'all. She's a complete stranger, honestly. And she messages back, and this is what she said. She's like, this is really random. She's like, but I feel a peace only because you asked your spiritual parents for approval. I've never seen that before. So I'm open to talking to you. So I was blown away.
She saw his relationship with me as a safety net for her to be able to trust that he was who he was and he wanted what he really said he wanted and that he was going to be accountable in that process. So now this is important. The only reason we're taking you the long route is because you got to realize I got him at 16 and I walked him through where to go to college or helped him develop the thinking between that. And then after college, what to do with ministry, how to come here, the women challenges. So every major crossroad in Jamal's life, I've been there and we've walked it through and processed it through. So Jamal comes up, Natasha comes up, World Changer Summit. That seems to be a very significant event.
Natasha came, so we talk, and we get to know each other, and then eventually I'm like, Apostle, like, hey, how's it going? I was like, man, it's going really well. Like, she's an amazing girl. I'm at this point, I learned a lot, so I wasn't trying to prophetically into it. I was just trying to be very normal, because I did not want to just get that into it. So long story short, we invite her to come to Chicago. And for World Changer Summit. And I said, hey, my church is having a powerful conference. You can come. You know, if we don't like each other, you can enjoy the conference and go back home. But if we do like each other more, we can talk here face to face for the first time. So she comes to World Changer Summit, and everyone was in agreement.
We were just watching, getting a piece. Did she get a word or nothing? Or
She was very, very nervous.
She was worshiping, I remember. Did I prophesy to her?
I don't think so. You was very, very cautious.
Yeah, I didn't want to scare her off.
He didn't want to scare her, but the peace was there. And so from there, at the World Changer Summit, I'll fast forward. I'm not going to go through our whole story. But basically, we met at World Changer Summit face to face for the first time. We were married in 9 months.
That's my story. Yeah, he was married 9 months after they met at World Changer Summit in California. I do the wedding.
Yep.
And we all fly to California. So look at this. Yeah, I behaved. I was trying to get him a wife. So from high school to college to ministry, now to a wife. I did the wedding, even up until the baby and him being here and starting ministry and stuff.
Okay, so from once we got married, me and Natasha moves from California to Chicago, and we just go into a new season. She enters into ministry with me. I'm still youth pastoring, and at this point, we get an idea about a marriage ministry that we get an idea, and we call it Married and Young. We just felt the call to help others. People were very inspired by our story, and I remember at this point, once we created Married and Young, it just goes. And our story goes viral. We call it the Facebook Love Story. And at this point, marriage was important to me, but it wasn't this. I was very much more into prayer, into sonship, into leadership. But we launched this ministry called Married and Young, and it goes. And so from there, it just kind of, I ended up writing my first book. And during this year, I would say I really began to lose a lot of the, a lot of stuff began to leak out of me. A lot of vision, a lot of the basic principles that God had entrusted in me began to leak out of me. And I would say it all came from my strong lack of prayer and more going into trying to build this business in Married and Young. And from there, I just began to, honestly, a little notoriety began to come. I began to get a little.
That thing took off. People love that stuff.
So, I mean, it got big. We were probably around, within the 6 months, we're averaging 100,000 visitors a month. And people began to tell me the potential of it and what it could become. And I ended up writing my book, my first book, and that goes Amazon bestseller, #1 bestseller. And I would say this stuff began to go to my head. And I did not begin to communicate things to him as this stuff begins to hit the fan. And but at some point during this process, probably about, I would say, how long after Married and Young, I end up getting, someone ends up calling me about.
Now, at this point, we are very close.
Yeah, I mean, we're inseparable. I mean, we talk about everything. I share everything to him.
I mean, it's like knots all over the heart. This is baby Bishop. The older he gets, he even starts to look like me. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
So
we're close. Yeah. All of these journeys, all these transitions, and then here comes the juice.
So you guys ready?
Y'all ready for the juice? Please tell me the juice. Y'all ready for the juice? It's about to get juicy.
So y'all ready? This is where the movie kind of, I know we're taking a long path. And just for anyway, so at this point, I get a call. This is when it gets real. Hopefully y'all are ready for this. For those of you that are crying, you better cry some more. Or you about to get upset.
This is where the real tears come.
So somebody calls me and they're like, "Hey man, there's somebody looking, with you, what you guys are doing with Married and Young." And man, and at this point I began to see that the seed in me for my own church or my own ministry later on was beginning to kind of come out. And I began to just get this moment of, I don't know enough. And so I was like, but whatever. So somebody calls me, a friend of mine. He's like, "Hey bro, somebody's looking, a church in Chicago is looking for a young adult pastor. Not a young adult pastor, a marriage pastor." And I was like, "Man, marriage pastor, bro, we're good." You know what I'm saying, man? You know me. I've gotten a lot of opportunities over the years as I'm with him. I've turned every one of them down. I'm not going to be at nobody church underneath nobody and anybody. I don't care what it is or how it is until I'm gone. I would get a lot of opportunities and I would shut them down. No, I'm not going nowhere. And at this point, this friend says to me, he's like, and I said, "Man, bro, I'm sold in my church. This is my home. This is my family. These are my people." He's like, "Jamal, man, I just, man, I know I love everything that God has done for you and with you at All Nations, but man, I just think that before you have your own church, that there's possibly some things that you need to be aware of or know how to do before you have your own church that you may not get from All Nations." And I'm like, well, I mean, and that kind of, because I had already been feeling that seed when he said that, it was like, wow. So at that, I was like, whatever, man, I'm good. And so he's like, "Well, okay, bro." So I turned it. Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't bring that to you.
I don't know because we didn't talk about it. So I'm just showing you, no shade. So this is from high school to college to girls to ministry to marriage. And it's the first time we didn't talk about something. So he didn't bring that to me.
But remember the thing that I said that was
leaking.
That was leaking, that was wanting me. So that seed was planted. So from there I told him no. And I was good. I was actually really good. When I say really good, I was like, man, the seed, I told Natasha and I was like, "Babe, I don't know what this is, but I mean, I really think that he may have some truth, but whatever, I'm playing it off." Well, now going into a friend of mine. This is completely separate from the friend that was trying to get me in this church. A friend of mine sees another pastor in that circle, in the contemporary circle. He sees another pastor and he says to him, "Hey, I have a friend of mine that's in Chicago. I would love it if you could talk to him about church planting." So he's like, "Okay, cool, whoever this guy is, all right, I'll talk to him, whatever." So my friend calls me. He says, "Hey, bro, I got you a meeting with blank." I was like, "What? Why does he want to talk to me?" He's like, "Bro, just talk to him. Man, he's not looking for anything. Just ask him a few questions." And I'm like, "Man, okay, whatever." So this pastor calls me. And when he calls me, he goes, hey man, your friend outside of one of my conferences told me that you're wanting to, do some stuff, man. He's like, honestly, like the meeting was like 2 months away, like whenever the phone call came. He's like, hey, so what are you looking for? Like, who are you? And I told him and I give him my whole story. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? My name is Jamal Miller, and man, in the next, few years, I've been submitted with my spiritual father, and I was very confident. I was like, my spiritual father, pastor here. I was like, I've done some great things, I've had a youth ministry here, launched a ministry called Married and Young, wrote a book, and I said, blah, 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 blah. And so at the point of me telling my whole little story, he's like, brother, his whole demeanor changes. He's like, man, you are killing it. And I'm like, yes, sir. And he says, man, I don't do this, but man, I would really like it if you possibly would consider coming on staff with me. And I'm like, huh? Like, it threw me a whole left field. I was like, what? He's like, man, I'll create a job for you. I'll give you a salary, your wife. Y'all can start making babies, and you can get all the things that you're looking for, and y'all can come here. And he begins to walk me through. He goes, man, there's some things that you could learn here, and this is a mega church. There's some things you could learn here that, man, you can't learn where you're at. And once again, that little plug, and I was like, huh. And he says, man, well, I don't want to outstep your spiritual father. He's like, so if you, man, I want you to talk to him, but if he's your true spiritual father, he will understand. And I was like, okay. So I went ahead and I was like, go off the call, and I tell Natasha, I'm blown away. This guy, he's a pretty big deal. And I was like, man, I called my friend, and he's like, I'm like, bro, he offered me a job. He's like, are you serious? He goes, bro, he don't do that. And he's like, bro, I'm telling you. He's like, but man, let me tell you something right now. Don't be impressed by his offer to you. You probably, because of who you are and how you're built, bro, any church in America would love to have you. So, man, and he's trying to back me away. He's like, bro, how about, there's some other churches that I think you would want to consider just to have on the table. So I start flirting with other churches. Like, from that point.
And we still have not talked about this. And we see each other every Sunday. We text every other day. We do random I love yous. Just not talked about none of this. But the statement of the dude untied one of our knots very clearly in the heart. So pay attention.
So once he began to give me some other opportunities, he talked, from Miami to different parts of the States, different opportunities. Pastors are calling me, saying, hey, pastors are telling me, I'm telling them, hey, I got this pastor looking at me. One pastor's like, hey, the fact that you got people looking at you, that shows that you are a commodity. Man, keep me posted. If you don't like that church, let me know. I'll be honest, guys, it starts tickling some stuff in me. I'm being dead serious. So finally, I get my point, my time. I call Apostle. I'm like, hey,
So he says, we need to come over. Here is the juice, y'all. They say this is a book, not a movie. Here's the juice. So we say, hey, Bishop. I say, hey. He's like, I need to come over. Let's talk. I was at the gym. And I said, okay, well, just let me know. Come over, let's talk. So he comes over. He's smiling. They're in good spirits. He's my youth pastor on staff.
We're in love. Me and Natasha, everything's great. And I sit down with him. Y'all, listen to me. In no way. I'm not gonna make myself look. Okay, so I sit down with him. And I'm like, hey, so we do some small talk, him and Apostle K. And I'm like, so how did I start it off? I don't even know.
You just hit me.
I just said, hey, so there's some opportunity that's come up, an opportunity somewhere for me to go and learn some things that I've never learned before. It's just a seasonal thing. I just, it's not for sure. I just wanted to get your possible permission to even see what could be about it, like whatever it is. And I give him the whole breakdown. We walk it through. And he just looks at me. And it was almost like somebody had punched him in his stomach and knocked the wind out of him. And he's looking at me. And at this point, the first word that come out of his mouth is, I don't have the word of the Lord for this. And guys, at this point, my mind, I'll be honest with you, my mind was not made up. I was not going to go or ready to go. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going. It was like, hey, what do you think about this? So when he said to me that he didn't have the word of the Lord, my interpretation was, we're personally so close that even if this is a good thing for you, I don't want you to go. So I can't give you a word of the Lord because I'm personally conflicted. That was my interpretation. So at that point, they tried to walk it through. That's all he said. He didn't say much at all. Did you say anything else?
That was probably like a 30-minute conversation. And when I'm dealing with any of my sons, I'm talking. I don't think I said nothing. My wife took over the entire conversation at this point. I completely just deflated. I think I took a deep breath. And I slumped down and I just said, I don't have God's mind on this.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And my interpretation of that was we needed to basically make a decision on our own. That was my interpretation. Very bad. And I'm going to give you what I should have done down the road once I give you the lesson after all this. This is the biggest lesson of my life right here. So he's like, I don't have the word of the Lord. So the next day he texts me and he's like, hey, so I know I didn't give you much clarity last night. Let's talk again tonight. So we meet up again. And he's like, let me tell you what you said to me last night. Let me tell you how I interpret it. He's like, I feel like I've been almost like with almost with a father with his daughter. And I've been in the back room her whole life preparing her for her wedding day. And now someone else is about to walk her down the aisle. And at this point, I looked at him, and guys, I was at a place where I was like, he maybe really doesn't know what's best for me at this point. This is a really good thing. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. I could go, and I'm going to learn, like, stuff on such a mega scale. And I'm going to be able to take it back. And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to him, and he's like, looking at me saying this stuff. And I'm like, but Bishop, no, that's not it at all. Let me tell you
what he said.
What did I say?
Baby Bishop said, I'm doing this for us. He said, this is for us. He's like, this is going to go around the world, This is for our movement. We're supposed to pioneer the marriage of these two worlds. They have the production, and they've got 20,000 people. We've got the power. But I'm doing this for us, Bishop.
Hands down. I was sold that the Lord was calling me to be a sacrifice, to be a Joseph.
To go ahead of the rest of us.
To go ahead and get the fullness of what we were supposed to be. And that I would go to this church and I would learn another side. And I was like, nobody else in our movement has the capabilities. Nobody else has it. I was like, I got it. God is calling me to do this. And so from there, I'm sold. I got the revelation. I'm like, man, right now, you're just personally conflicted. And that's how I saw it. And
now, I honestly, at this point, did not. To have the context, baby, Bishop was the youngest disciple I'd ever had in my life in context. So we have substantial history and provided my own experiences with everything I had ever interpreted as betrayal. When the moment we had that conversation, I didn't think immaturity. I didn't think distraction. I didn't even think seduction. My mind, my heart went immediately over to betrayal. How could you, after all of this and after, all of the processes and blah, 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 blah. And so this is the first time in our relationship where I didn't have the word of the Lord, and that's uncommon because the basis of a lot of our relationship is prophetic. I've heard from the Lord. God has said things to me and all of that stuff. So that was the first time I honestly didn't have God's word on it. I didn't know what God was saying or what God was doing. And here comes the hell. From that point, from the pastor guy, my right to say and feel anything was taken when he set Pastor Jamal up by saying, if he's really your father in the Lord, he'll know this is what's best for you. And so here we go with a tornado. So at this point, we are no longer a small church.
No, I mean my we're not a small church at all, and we're doing
Our influence is growing. People know
we're at
him.
a very strong pivot.
It's a very critical point.
I mean, very critical point. I mean, I would say, because I mean, yeah, very critical, very crucial moment. And so I felt so like this was, my wife was at a, we were just at a both place where it was like, man. And I remember the night, it just got bad, guys. It hit the fan. I mean,
it was like a month.
Y'all, it was bad.
So the church started to sense that we were ripping apart.
Because I told the youth, I had a night. I didn't tell him.
He didn't tell me.
Well, no. One night he ends up saying to me, he's like, well, I mean, he kind of saw that I was really at resolve that I wanted to go. He tells me, he's like, hey, if you go, make sure they pay you a lot of money. And hey, what, and he was just, I kind of at a resolve. And I thought, man, okay. So we actually went down to visit. Me and my wife would go down to visit. And I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you guys. It was amazing. And it was at a place I was like, I've never seen church like this. But remember the seed in me. And I wasn't thinking any of this. And I remember the pastor saying to me that at the, our last meeting, because we met with every pastor, every person, every campus pastor. We met with everybody, all their major leaders. We had dinner, we had lunch. And I remember the pastor saying to me, he says, Jamal, so, man, you got character, you got competency, but the one thing I'm concerned about is culture. Man, you're coming from a very apostolic prophetic house. I looked up your pastor on YouTube. He says, man, there's some things that you guys are doing there that are pretty, that I would honestly say that it's not.
We don't do that here.
That's not our focus.
There's no power in this place.
And I need to know, are you going to be okay with that, with doing what we do? And I said, you know what? I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like. And he's like, okay, well, let's just walk it through. So I go back and I end up accepting the offer on that trip. They made me an offer and I accepted the offer.
And we had not talked about the acceptance of the offer.
So I come back and guys, I mean, they gave me like 3 weeks?
I don't remember.
They gave me 3 weeks. And I come back and
he told the youth ministry that he was a youth pastor over at that point. So
I started doing some really, really, very, very, very uncommon, unlike of me. I've been at this point very submitted, very, just everything.
So I am away on a trip.
Yep, you are.
And I arrive Saturday night, and I get back in to my church to preach for our early morning service. And when I walked in my church, I heard the travail and the screeching cry of some teenagers. And so I rushed past the teenagers to my office, and I called my elders in the room, and I'm like, is there somebody that's been shot? Why are these kids out here crying hysterically like this? What's happening? And they tell me, no, nobody's dead. Pastor Jamal told them he's leaving. And I'm like, Pastor Jamal told them what? Without me? Yeah, he told them he's getting ready to go. So now we've got a whole different ball game because we've got the most vulnerable demographic in the church.
And at this point, guys, I'm like the beloved.
Yeah, at this point, he's
can't do no wrong. Yeah. I've never done any wrong. I mean, the fact that I moved my whole life, my wife, our story, everything that we were, everything that we are at this point was like, I mean, I was the golden child of the inspiration and a place of destiny and obedience. And at that very point, everything is thrown out. And Jamal becomes the betrayer. Jamal becomes the Judas. Jamal becomes
the capstone.
I mean, he becomes I lose it all.
Because at this point, because of the depth of our relationship, it's difficult for our relationship to bleed privately. Because people are accustomed to seeing us interact a certain way, and people are used to watching us engage. And in front of probably 700 or 800 people at that time, we split over the course of like 3 to 4 weeks, and it was evident. So Pastor Jamal had a support group audience in our church. I had a support group audience in our church. And so our church started to be divided. Tell my wife to give me the battery. The charger. So our church started to get divided because now the youth pastor, who was a very close son, and the senior pastor, in front of all of these hundreds of people, are no longer interacting. They are no longer engaging. I have taken defense of our youth, but his people have taken defense of him. So they're like, oh my God, why is the apostle behaving like this? He's got to realize that sometimes it takes for somebody greater than him to open up doors that he can't open. And then I've got people like, you see, Jamal replaced me, and now it's time for Apostle to see who his real sons is, because all he ever wanted was a platform, and all he ever wanted was to get famous, and Apostle was loving him. So now we've got the war of the sons, we've got the divide of the church, and we've got two people really bleeding because he doesn't quite understand why I'm reacting in the way I'm reacting, and I'm perplexed about why he doesn't know why what he is doing is making me hurt. It was, Apostle B just said, civil war. It was bad. It was really bad.
I never seen, I mean.
And he had never seen that side of me. Jamal did not begin affectionate. He grew into that way because of me in his life. We were very affectionate. I don't think we hugged, spoke, love you.
Because I just grew up very just, I didn't, and so for him, he was the first person that taught me how to be vulnerable and how to let go and a lot of those things. And so, I mean, at this point, once all this begins to hit the fan and it got really bad, I actually had a check. Well, the prophets came after me. The prophets came after me. I remember the exact night because he preached a message that morning. And he was, DNA. DNA, and he went in. It was powerful, and I was like, oh, God. But at this point, I was still sold. At this point, I really was sold that this was necessary for the move. I was like, I got to go through this.
Yeah, at this point, he's like, he'll understand later.
Yes,
sometimes
I was like,
I just got to make a decision, and, he'll get it.
I was really convinced. So the prophets come after me, and they're like, what are you doing? They was like, you need to repent. They came after me, my head. My wife, at this point, she's only been there for a year.
Oh, yeah.
So she's still very new. She wasn't, and so her place was, she was just coming into a place of acceptance and agreeing with what God was doing there. So for her, when she saw this happen, she went, we gotta go. I'm not gonna lie to you. She was even at a point where she was like, I remember she was in the car like, I'm not, Jamal, these people are turning on us. Like, what is going on? So she leaves. I'm like, babe, I'm not leaving like this. I'm about to talk to him.
Yeah.
So I call a meeting, and I'm like, we go into the office, and they're like, Jamal, you need to repent. You need to do boom, 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 boom. Prophets are hitting me. And I'm like, hey,
at this point, he was really resolved to go.
Yeah, but I did see that this is not good. This is not God.
What's happening here? Yeah.
So I go home to my wife, and I'm like, babe, I've spent almost 10 years building a relationship with this man and these people. This is not the way it is supposed to happen. I said, I don't know what in the world is happening or going on, but we're not leaving like this. And she's like, well, Jamal, we've already made a decision. I said, babe, I'm calling them tomorrow, and I'm going to let them know that I need more time. So I call the other church, and I'm like, hey, man, so some things have happened. It's not good. My pastor's not happy. Prophets aren't happy. He's like, prophets? I was like, yeah, no, hey, man.
He's like, prophets?
I was like, hey, man, it's not pretty over here. I was like, it's going down over here. He said, well, Jamal, we really prayed about this, and we really feel like this is God. And he's like, do you feel like it's a timing thing, or is it a it thing? I said, man, it's a both thing. I said, man, I don't know what's going on. I said, this thing is just going all out the door. And I was like, man, I just need more time. And he's like, okay. So at this point, guys, I am at 1,000% confusion, 1,000% upset. We have another meeting. And I'm trying to show him that I'm not trying to come against him. He's texting me what these people are saying about me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I was really seriously about to stay. I was.
But then he got a hold of the firstborn. So I think my firstborn is over here. So Apostle Raleigh.
But this is before I get to Apostle Mayberry. The senior pastor calls me. And he calls me. And he does, this is not something he does. And he calls me, and he's like, basically, at that point, he's like, this is not good for you. You need to get out of there.
Right.
This is not healthy. That is not okay. And basically starts giving me this sonship talk, saying that, in any place, you got to understand when you are a son that eventually you grow up. And when you grow up, you should be able to move on and make your own decisions and do the things that you know that you're called to do. And I'm like, and I said, this is what I said to him. He's like, so why are they upset? And I said, man, they're upset because they don't want me to go to a church that doesn't have power.
Oh, Jesus.
I said,
I had no clue you said that.
And he's like,
Bruh.
what do you mean? I was like,
Bruh.
the thing is, I said, my whole life I've been built and prepared to be a part of a movement that is going to restore signs and wonders to the church and restore miracles and prophetic ministry. And I said, and to them, this is going not that direction. And I said, this is why they don't understand. And, he didn't really answer that. And but I really was being truthful. I was like, but there's some things I feel like you guys have that we could possibly learn from. I'm being super transparent. He goes, well, Jamal, man, you just got to just, whatever. And so eventually I get to Apostle BJ. And
He on here. He just got on here. He's like, this was awful. Yeah, he get to the firstborn. And if my logic is unsettled, most people rely on either him or my wife to try to speak to me. Because were we engaging much at this point? I don't think we were.
No, we were off and on.
Slightly. So he goes out with Apostle Raleigh. And Apostle Raleigh tells him bye-bye.
Apostle Mayberry says to me, I'm like, hey, I tell him the whole story. And he's like, Jamal, I wish you would have came to me sooner. And I said, he's like, I just wish you would have came to me sooner, man. All this could have been prevented. And he says to me, and I give him this whole Joseph spiel. I give him the whole breakdown of, man, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm thinking. And he just says, okay, all right. And he goes, Jamal, you have to go. Your heart is already there. There's no way that we can look at you in the crowd every Sunday and know that there's a possibility that you want to be somewhere else. And I was like, and he's like, so Jamal, you have to go. And guys, I'll be honest, man, it was, I was like, okay. And that was it. That was the last conversation. And we left. And
No. So the Sunday that he left, again, everybody, Apostle BJ said it hurt so bad. Everybody knows that this is Baby Bishop, and he's a heart son of mine. So I am in a war right now. And I'll give you context on my side because it's just a lot going on, right? So, and my war is, how do I not, Rashida said it was so weird. How do I not show my church
that he's hurt,
that I'm hurting and bleeding everywhere, and bless him, or pray for him in a way where my teenagers don't feel like I dishonored him, or the people that love him in the crowd don't feel like I'm being a Saul and holding him back. So I was in a majorly conflicted spot where she said, I can't hide it. I thought I did well. In my mind, I thought I did well. So I say, Pastor Jamal has decided to take an opportunity at another church, and today we're going to pray for him. And
no, he was like, by his own omission. I mean, you did say that.
What I say?
You did. I mean, he was like, he thinks this is what's best for him and his family. And I mean, he was like, he was straight to the point. It was no ounce of love. It was like, it wasn't like dishonoring. It was to the point where you knew, if you knew him, that he was not in agreement. So
I said,
praise
Father,
for us.
I said, Father, I thank you for Pastor Jamal. I pray that he has no car accidents and that his tires are working on his road trip. In Jesus' name, amen. So.
And we left that Sunday.
And they left that Sunday.
And it was my birthday.
And it was his birthday. And they had a party or something, right? They were giving you cupcakes or something downstairs? Yeah. Something, and I didn't go. Yeah. I was gone.
No, we went to a restaurant.
So a couple of days later, I'm in GNC, and one of my, Apostle Sherman, one of my sons called me. And he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing good. What's going on? I was determined not to let out the details of this story to anybody. Apostle Sherman says, I watched live stream Sunday. You okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing good. The blessing of the Lord make it rich. He said, no, you are really hurting right now. You didn't let out a prophecy, a tongue, a quicken, a oil, a declaration. You didn't let out a nothing. And what's happening down there? So now I'm like, oh crap, people are getting aware of this. My friends begin to call me now. So now I have friends calling me, other pastors. I am hearing about what this boy is doing to you. This is exactly why you can't trust these people. Don't walk around letting these people become sons after no 2 years. You know, you can't love them like that. Put them on like a coat and take them off when you leave church. That's all they want is position out of you. So and these are good people. So my friends are hitting me. I'm legitimately hurting. I've got pastors calling me, mentors and stuff like, hey, we've heard about what's happened. You need to be very, very, very careful about this, all of this stuff. And so I'm in a real bad spot because I have a sore spot with betrayal. Yeah. And that's the one thing that has had the power to take the wind out of me and make me think about quitting ministry. And at this point, my thought was, if Baby Bishop, if Pastor Jamal could do this, then there is nobody else I could ever trust in my life. He said that to me.
He's like, how, if you do this, how can I ever trust anyone else? You are my reason. Like, I look at you in the moments when everybody else is jacking up and hurting me. Yeah. And I see you as a person that, man, he's my, what did you call him?
He was my motivator to stick in there. He had become a great son. I mean, I have great sons, but I have a couple of them that embody it. So at this point, I want you to see this is that in my world, my whole mandate came under attack because now I was contemplating never opening myself up relationally in that way again. Yeah. I could preach. I wanted to prophesy. Those are all things I was great at and wanted to do. But the part of me that was born to open hearts, my heart to men, was shot because I am a discerning, suspicious person, and nobody could have ever paid me to believe that these possibilities were here in him. So it just completely threw me off. So anyway, one of my friends called me one day, and my wife is walking me through this. My wife is like, baby, you love him. That's all that matters. Blah, 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 blah. Still don't have the word of the Lord. To be very honest, I went to God to ask God what he was saying about it. My prophets did. I did not. I'm done. One of my friends called me and he said, hey, I heard about what happened. I'm like, okay, cool. Because everybody knows how close Jamal and I are. And he says, do me a favor. And I'm like, yeah, what's going on, bro? He said, whatever you do, don't close your heart to him. And I'm like, man, please, I'm done. He got what he needed. He's gone. He down there at this church. They're going to give him a couple of satellites and some smoke and some fog. My exact words were, he went down there to learn some crap he could have Googled. They ain't got no information.
No, you said that to me, too.
I told you that, too, yeah. I said he could have learned whatever he going to learn over Google. And people don't have Jesus in them. It's, it's just a big mission center. So I'm just going in. I'm like, no, I'm not. I can't live like this. I can't have my heart open just randomly like that. He's like, listen to me. The worst thing you could do for you and the worst thing you could do for him is to close your heart. Don't do it. And I disobeyed. So he went down there, right? He moved.
Is y'all connection okay? I see some folks in there stressing.
That'd be okay.
So yeah, once we moved to Oklahoma, oh Jesus.
We stopped talking.
Once we moved, he didn't cut me off immediately. Once we got there, they tell me, basically my first day, Jamal, after your interview, man, we saw that there was so much more in you than we thought. You have the it factor. And they ended up changing my entire role from just overseeing something super small to taking over a very large arm of the ministry. And multiple campuses. I have no megachurch experience. I am in over my head. And but I, and then on one of my days of my training, I was going to go through 3 months of training. On the first day of my training, he texts me and he says, "Hey, cancel the youth ministry. Cancel."
Oh, because we're getting ready for World Changers Summit, and he's scheduled to speak so that it doesn't look messy. And I decided I don't want this to not look messy. I think it needs to look as messy as what it is, and so I'm not going to give you the honor of acting like we're
Things are
not
okay.
going through what we're going through. I feel like that's deceptive. So I told him, don't worry about coming up here. Just cancel it. Never mind. Focus on what you're doing.
I get a text message, and I go into flat out depression. I tell the guy I'm working with.
Going to no darn depression.
I didn't go into depression.
Oh, did you?
It felt like it.
Okay.
What does depression feel like, guys?
Oh my gosh.
This was depression for me. This was the lowest point of my life when he texted me that text. I felt like my entire life, everything I had built up to this point, was for nothing. I look at him, and I'm in the car with the person I'm working with, and I said, "Man, my life is over." I said, "Everything I've built up to this point, there's no reason. I have no reason for anything." And I was like, and he's like, he did not get it at all. He was trying his best to understand, and I said, "Man," and I just go into straight up, y'all. I'm talking about just days, a daze. Like for the next few weeks, I'm in a daze. I'm not listening. I'm not paying attention. I'm dropping the ball on many things. Mind you, I'm in a brand new role, and I didn't talk to anybody. I wasn't talking to anybody. I did not understand. I felt without a shadow of a doubt, I felt 100%. He felt betrayed, and I felt betrayed. I felt misunderstood. I felt all these different things. And it comes to one point in this where the pastors of the high up pastors in this church get together, and I guess they come to a conclusion that I was not producing at the rate that they thought I would be producing. So they bring me into a meeting, and they basically say, "Jamal, why did you come here?" And I'm like, and I tell them, and they're like, "Well, the person that we interviewed is not the guy that we're seeing right now. We don't know what's changed. We don't know what's happened. We know there were some things going on with you and your old church, but we don't understand why, do you want to," basically they asked me, "Do you want to go back?" And at this point, they said, "We'll pay for your plane ticket. We'll pay for everything back. If you want to go back there, you can go." At this point, I'm like, I can't go back. They don't want me. They've cut me off. I'm done. And at this point, they're like, "Well, because if you don't get it together, we're going to have to take some other considerations." And at this point, I think about my family. I'm like, I have a family, I have a wife. I can't be sitting around here moping and gloping. I need to get on the grind, and I need to make the best of this. So from there, guys, I become everything that I had said I would never become. I become a robot in ministry. I become just another skill set. I become just another gift. I become just another person fulfilling a role in a church. And now, mind you, this church is in no way am I saying this church is demonic or anything like that. Like, they're a great church doing great things for Jesus, winning many souls. And when I got serious, I actually learned a lot. But it was nowhere near what it was off. It got to a point where, I'm working and I've just basically let go. And I'm like, I just got to make the most of this. And so I began to flourish very quickly at this church. And they fell in love with me. My wife is, we just go in and we do what we're supposed to do. And then it comes a time when Apostle Matthew Stevenson is preaching in a very close city to the city I was
So
going
we're
to
not talking. I'm done. I'm resolved. I'm walking in my new mantle, which is heartless, ruthless prophet. My job is to deliver the word of the Lord and move forward, and all of that. And I'm scheduled to preach in a very near city to Pastor Jamal. And at this juncture, we have not talked. That's my resolve. I pulled back. We were done. Elder B just said it was awfulness was the new mantle. And and so, but at this point, I have the word of the Lord. God has spoken to me about what's going to transpire against Jamal, what traps were there, what was happening, and God gave me some dreams, and I wrote them down. I told my wife, okay, this is what's going to happen. I hope somebody walks him through this. Was my attitude on it. So, Pastor Jamal and I think Elder BJ decides to work against me, and I think Elder BJ knew
that I was coming.
that Pastor Jamal would be popping up on me.
I called Apostle BJ and I said, hey, me and my wife are going to come. Because I still loved him, y'all. I really did. I was hurt tremendously. I didn't understand, but I knew it was a misunderstanding. And so from there, I called Apostle B, and I'm like, hey, is it okay if I come see Apostle preach? And he says to me, he goes, Jamal, it's fine, but you've got to be okay with having no expectations. If he doesn't talk to you, you have to be okay. And I'm like, yes, sir. I'm just going there for support. I want him to at least see that I'm not the cold-hearted something that everybody's making me out to be. So my wife at this point is, she's taking secondary offense. She did not want to go. And I told her, I said, babe, you have to come. Like, if you don't go, it's going to look really bad. Like, my wife is my filler. I'm not a filler. My wife is my heart. She's like the person that feels, and she's the person that has you get around her, you just feel like you feel like $1 million when you're with her. With me, you just want to just do more in life. So with her, she was like, babe, I'm not going. And one of her good friends was like, you need to go with him and support your husband. So we drive down to the city, and we show up. It's a very,
So I don't know. I could not call Elder BJ to rebuke him because I would have never have agreed. Number one, I'm traveling. This is a rare trip because normally when I travel, I only have.
This is a long story, y'all.
Yeah, but it's powerful. I only travel with one person. I've got like several of my sons and daughters with me from this trip. I never travel with more than one. And so I'm traveling. And I'm preaching, and I'm preaching, and I'm preaching, and I'm preaching, and I look to the back, and here goes Jamal, and here goes, hi baby, daddy's talking, and Jamal and his wife are sitting on the side of this church, and I happen to look over there in this other state and realize that they're there, and I am extremely vexed. I'm just vexed. So I'm preaching, I prophesy. Him and his wife are sitting in this other state, and I feel ganged up on. I feel jumped. I feel like, who is responsible?
He was not the same. I was like, who is he? Just seems so lifeless. Like, I'm being dead serious, y'all. He was, I mean, it broke my heart to see him that way. But I knew we caught him off guard without a shadow of a doubt.
I didn't like that. And Elder BJ, he couldn't have told me that Jamal was coming because I'd have went off.
So at the end of the meeting,
at the end of the service,
awkward times 1,000, awkward times 1,000,000.
He's talking to some of my other sons. So Apostle Yolanda's there, Apostle Brian is there, Jason Long is there. It's quite a few of them there.
No, I mean it's real. People know that they know what's happening, know what's going on. He looks at me. I mean, no. Okay.
I see him and I say, hey, how you doing? I looked at him and Jamal. I said, it's so good to see you. Okay. All right. You guys have a safe trip. And so I walk off and I go to the hallway and they're talking around to people. My wife is talking to people.
Yeah. And
I said goodbye. Have a great trip, guys. It's great to see you. And I went in the hallway and I'm talking, minding my business, and it clears out.
And I run up to him and I knew that he didn't want to talk. I knew he didn't want to anything. So I just simply said, hey, can I at least get a hug?
So baby Bishop walks up on me and he disarms me and he says, Bishop, and I look at him, he says, can I at least have a hug? When I tell you
and he says, are you going to do this to me in front of all these people? And I was like, do what to you? Remember, y'all, I'm just not, I was like, do what to you? And I said, I'm just here. So we hug. And
when I tell you, I bawled. I bawled. I bawled. I bawled. I bawled. I bawled. I bawled like somebody shot my poodle in the middle of the street. I cried so hard. So we're in a conference, and I'm hugging this guy, and I'm just weeping. And I've got all these big time apostles and folk that's like, what the heck is going on?
He's crying,
And I'm like,
he's crying in my arms. And I'll be honest, it was at the point where I was really uncomfortable. I was like, I mean, people start pulling out their phones.
they got out phones.
They start taking pictures. People taking video. People they like this. I mean, it was like, I was like, and he's over here crying, and he's wiping his face. And I'm like, I'm just hugging him. And once again, I almost went back to the moment that it was like when I remember like the awkwardness I felt when he put his coat over me for the first time.
Always the same awkwardness.
And I was like, what do I do right now? And so, but at that point I knew, I was like, man, like, he still loves me. And he didn't say anything to me, guys. He cried. We let go.
And I went.
And he walked away. Apostle Ilana Stick was there. He walked away.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't. At that moment, you just, when you really love like that, all of the stuff that you feel in between ends up just not really mattering much. And it was just a way to get me instantly. I mean, I wanted what was best for him. I wanted what was good. That it just took me all the way out. And so I left, and that was it. We kind of opened up communication a little bit after that.
And on my drive home, I was very emotional on my drive home. He didn't see it. Nobody saw it but my wife. I was very emotional on my drive home. It was a point of relief, a point of hope. And I knew, I didn't know what was going to happen from there at all. But from there, when we got home, he sends me a text message the first thing next morning. And he says, let's deal with this while my heart is open. So we get on the phone, and guys, it was like WWE Royal Rumble World War III. I mean, we just went at it. You did this, you said this, you did this. And he's like, but you said this, you did this.
I said, how could you put this on me like this and force me to have to answer all these questions to people? You were not looking out for me. You uncovered me.
And I'm like, but you
right.
threw me under the bus. You didn't protect me. I said, all these people coming after me. And I mean, we were just going at it. I was like, you misunderstood. I did not try to hurt. I was like, I am,
He said, I'm not trying to hurt you.
And I knew his greatest fears, guys. I've seen sons hurt him deliberately. I've seen sons do things to him that has tremendously caused him to put his heart up. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, I'm not one of them. Please don't make me one of them. Because he had put me in category with these guys that I knew that I was not. So we go at it, and I mean, and then we come to a place of basically, I remember him saying, once we kind of got all our stuff out, it was like, okay, so what do we do from here?
We're like, so now what? What are we doing?
And I was like, at that point, we started corresponding. We talked like every morning. He would call me every morning. And we would talk every morning on my drive to work. And I was still doing my best. At this point, I was not convinced that it was time to go. But he asked me, he said, Jamal, what if something happens? What would you do? Like, if something tragic was happening, what would you do? And did you know what you would do? I said, yeah, we would come back if something tragic was to happen. He's like, okay, I just want to know. So we're not give you all the details, but long story short, it really, we were there.
He got in trouble for praying in tongues.
Well, no, I didn't get in trouble.
I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, I didn't get in trouble, but guys, I'm not going to give you all the details, but it was just more and more. It became, once our relationship mended, it got to a point where I knew that this was a dead end. And I knew that my ministry Married and Young, began to die. And one of my other mentors says to me, was like, Jamal, you can't let that die. That is your lifeline. And I had no idea what he meant. And he's like, so long story, and that comes to a point where I literally, one of my mentors says to me, he's like, Jamal, with what God is doing in you, and I can't say that this is the best place for you. And this is another mentor of mine. He's like, I would really take some time to pray. So I call Apostle, and I'm like, hey man, I think we need to leave.
He said, Bishop, I think I'm coming home.
And he's like, and Apostle's like, first thing he says, all right, let's put this on record. This is 100% your decision.
Yeah, I am. It needs to be known around the world, across the board. I'm not forcing you. This is your resolve. This is between you and God. I ain't got nothing to do with this. He said, yeah.
So from there, me and my wife sit down, we go to eat, and we lay out like, I mean, y'all, I have no job in Chicago. I have nothing in Chicago. I have no position. I have no nothing. I'm, nothing. And I'm like, man, my wife is pregnant at this point. I was like, I mean, we ain't got no insurance. I mean, we're just completely like it. But I knew that if we stayed there any longer, that it would just get worse in the sense of us looking like we were loyal when we weren't really loyal. I was going there every day and my heart wasn't there. And I felt so bad that my heart wasn't there. And so I sit down with one of the pastors that I was closest to, and I let him in on what was happening. And I mean, they give me every opportunity. Do you want to plant a church? Do you want to travel? Man, what is it? What is it? And I said, man, I'm sorry. I don't belong here.
Ha! Ha! Ah, yeah, yeah. Ah! Woo! Glory. Glory.
And so they tried to get me to stay longer. And I said, when Natasha was pregnant, our baby Harvest, she was the reason why it was such a quick thing. Because I knew that we needed to get Natasha back to Chicago for at least a few months in order to get settled to have the baby. So, I mean, we just start moving forward. We end up launching a conference, an online conference. I get an idea. I call one of my business mentors, and I'm like, hey, I'm going back to Chicago. I don't have a job. Married and Young is the only thing I could see as a possible resource for finances. And he's like, well, okay. Well, do an event. So we put together a conference, guys. In the middle of us doing this conference, from us transitioning back to Chicago, from where we were, we transitioned back to Chicago. My wife, I mean, we're driving, they didn't pay for anything to church. When I told them, the pastor didn't talk to me. I mean, it was a hard thing for the church because they loved us tremendously. Honestly, they did. So when we left, I mean, we did our best. They basically we had to tell everyone that we were going to prepare to plant a church and all these things. And so we go back, and it was a very peaceful transit, very peaceful leave. People were hurt, but for them it was like, okay. So once we get back to Chicago, we do this conference, and I mean, we do this thing, and I mean, oh my gosh, God blew it up. And
you made more money than some people making a year.
We end up making like close to $20,000 on this conference. And I mean, I'm talking about breathe on this event. And it's a fully online event. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. And he ended up giving me we ended up grossing over $20,000 on this event. And me and Apostle, as soon as I get back the first Sunday,
we preached together.
We preached together,
and we told our church what happened. So I said, this is what happens when you tie hearts with people. You risk bleeding. And I've been bleeding, guys.
And we tell the whole church our entire story. And I mean, guys, I'll be honest, it was surreal. But the thing I believe, like when we come to the conclusion of it, like now that was almost about 5 months ago.
Oh, don't ask me, I don't know.
That was about 6 months. That's about 6-7 months ago, and we are here in Chicago. My little girl Harvest is 4 months. We have a beautiful house here in Chicago. God has. I mean, I'm working basically, part time. But we are 100% the business that we are building online. We have 2 more we're launching in 2016. God has put his hand on what we're doing. And
he ain't forgot who he was. He not no life coaching, skinny jeans wearing, powerless, spiky head, pretty boy preacher. He's he moving in signs and wonders and deliverance. Hallelujah.
So coming back, was a full embracing of who I really am.
That was the war.
That was the thing.
Who he was under attack, and who I was under attack. Because Satan was trying to get me to quit having a father's heart.
Yep.
And Satan was trying to get him to abandon his destiny as a sent one.
And so coming back, I mean, it was like, I mean, we went full throttle into this, who we truly were destined to be. I'm not going to lie to you. It was just the beginning, because coming back has been the most humbling journey. Humbling. I mean, I don't have any authoritative role in our church other than just being a son and being a faithful one. I am in a place right now where God is restoring me and my wife's understanding of who we're called to be. My wife is at such a powerful place of confidence in who she's called to be, and that this is our grace in our house and who we're called to pioneer. I have so much more confidence that I'm called to be a judge to the thing that was trying to take me down and trying to lock me up and trying to sabotage, what I was called to do and called to be. And the thing is that, man, I would not have been at this place, because what it was, there was a seed in me that had to be uprooted. And a lot of times, if we don't take God's route, he has to take other measures. I don't think it had to happen, but I made it have to happen. I forced it to have to happen. And it's at a point right now where I can say I would not be where I am in my mental space regarding my call and my destiny if that had not happened. So I thank God, and I'm grateful that he loved me and my purpose enough to take me through a hard road, to teach me the lesson I had to learn in order to get me back to the most authentic part of who I was called to be. And sonship, guys, is more than just having somebody to do patty cake with. Sonship is more than having someone that's going, tell you that you're called to do great things and called to, because there was a phone call that we had while I was where I was at in the other church, and he says, I asked God, why did you give me Jamal as a son? Why didn't you just give him one of these megachurch pastors? Why a prophet? And he's like, I guarantee you, I don't believe that someone else would have been able to walk through you and keep going with you, because everybody else would have celebrated something like this when I knew it was your demise. And I mean, when he said that, open that thing up, I was like, I was about to just flip all on the ground, you know what I'm saying? Because it was like once again, a light scope was shined on me and who I was called to be. And so, guys, that is, now we're at a place right now where, we love each other.
Yeah, we love each other. We smoochy.
And, he's the reason. And I would not be the man that I am if it was not for him. And if he would have let go fully and not let me back in, I don't know where we would be. My entire destiny would have been rerouted. And I would have become everything I would have said I would never become. So, that's our story, guys. And I'm not trying to, I know many of you were asking, what's my Periscope?
His Periscope. So that is our story. Satan tried to get both of us at a critical point, and he wanted me to just be some oracle that set up and told people the future all day, but didn't really love people. And
that's the thing for him, his greatest war.
That is my...
Because I will say naturally and more... his easier strength is prophet. He is a prophet without even trying. He's a prophet when he don't want to be. He's a prophet, you know what I'm saying? Like, the man, he dreams every night. He sees things he don't want to see. He hears things he don't want to hear. But a father has been his greatest challenge.
I always say I have a love-hate relationship with that part of my calling.
And he's gotten prophetic words from every person I've heard that say something to him. And they say, don't do this, don't do this. This is going to come easy. But this thing, you are called to have sons and daughters from around the world.
Every word I get.
Don't give up on your sons. Everything you're doing is for your sons. And guys, I'm a straight product of his yes. I am a product, and many others on here, I'm a product of his yes, of his obedience, of his call, his sacrifice. I wouldn't be who I am today. I would not be on the path to accomplish what I'm called to accomplish in the earth. And that's it.
Yeah, so... that's it. That's our story.
Wow, 9:30.
And
who was on from the beginning?
Pastor Jamal. We got about 6:19. I'll see. Pastor Jamal has a great destiny, and it is not my job to hold him back, but just to employ restraints on him. I'm excited about helping him be released into his assignment and his purpose. And I love him. That's what ends up in the bottom line. So I took y'all through this, or we took y'all through this stuff to see that relationships come under tremendous attack.
Tremendous.
And especially when it's God. And all attack or all difficulty does not necessarily mean that something is not from God. Sometimes, my opinion is that I think as far as Jamal and I's relationship, that was probably the most important thing that could happen. Because I think I almost hit this, clack where you at, I almost knocked this thing down.
What do you say?
Because it tied our hearts tighter.
Yes.
That knot got tighter.
I mean, he knows he can trust me without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, he knows, and I know I can trust him. There is no one or nothing that can come in between this. And this right here will be used as a testimony to the nations. And this is glory to glory. And so it's powerful, guys. It's amazing. Hopefully you've been encouraged by it. This is the most supernatural thing that has ever happened in my life. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that the Lord has called me to carry the message of sonship to the nations and to be a
because you're going to have to continue this, and this needs to be your scope for the next couple of days.
Yeah. So, guys, if you want, I'll probably be doing some scopes and talking about this stuff a little bit more. You can follow me at PS Jamal
his
Miller.
news Periscope series is going to be Lord Make Me a Son.
So if you want to be a son, a real one, and you want to serve your pastor, serve your leader, please, you can follow, and I'll be doing some stuff. I do some scope devos in the morning to encourage you, but my main encouragement to you more than anything is, man, if you can, your father, whoever it is, your mother, whoever she is, in the Lord, she's not or he's not perfect. Do not expect them to be perfect.
Yeah.
Do not expect them to meet every one of your needs. Do not expect them to be everything that you always want and always needed and be, because eventually, if you have that mentality, they will become your God. God has not ordained that your spiritual parent is your God, but they are simply an assistant. They are simply a partner with God in order to help form you into what you're called to be. So don't make them God. And so it's very easy to mix that up and think that they're going to be perfect and meet all your needs and do for you and do this for you and do that for you and be there for you whenever you need them. This man, there have been some times where I couldn't get a hold of him. And what I had to do, did I throw a pity party? No, I went to my Father. I went to God. You know what I'm saying? And then I brought back to him what I got from God. And what you think about this? Am I crazy? Am I hearing right? And I want to just give you this because you can see through our story that we've been through so many things that easily someone could have cast it off and been like, that was the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And so I'm just giving you some insight about that. So
go follow him. Is it Jamal Miller? Is PS Jamal Miller on Periscope. Go follow him. He does a Periscope every morning at 7?
No.
He does an early morning scope. So go follow him. He's a tremendous man of God. He's got, 3 books?
Yeah.
He's got 3 books on Amazon.com. I am honored to be the one to help him towards his journey and to watch him become a father.
Yes.
And I'm excited about the day when I get to help him build a house. Those are things that I'm actually looking forward to, and it brings me tremendous joy. So thank you guys for spending this 2 hours with me. I just got some critical text messages from one of my BFFs. I need to review what's going on in my world. So I got to go, but go back, review it. I'll leave this up for you guys. Go follow him, Jamal Miller, and PS Jamal Miller, and let's make this work. All right, deuces.
Love you guys. Thanks for staying on with us, and I pray you were encouraged by our journey.
Can Jamal prophesy? Yeah, he actually does very well. You prophesy, don't you?
Yeah, I prophesy, guys.
He prophesies. He casts out demons.
I got an inheritance.
Come on, church.
Everything that's on his life is double
church.
portion. Come on, this is a double portion anointing, guys. We ain't he's got everything. He's raising up sons and daughters that can do more than him in order for us to be able to be spread out across the earth. Yeah. This is not a monopoly, all right? This is not a one-time hit wonder. He is duplicating himself and others in order for us to be more. Jesus Christ was just the beginning, and he is just the beginning of sons coming out of his life. And so don't get it twisted, y'all. He ain't the only one. So there's many others, guys. That God is raising up in this earth and doing some great things through. So let's just come on, double portion. So believe that for yourself, all right? That there's a double portion for you as well, whether it be you.
Make sure it's from the right source. Person. You don't want the double portion of devils.
And then as well, what would you say to those that don't have a spiritual father or person right now? Would you tell them to just I mean, never mind.
The easiest thing to say would be to seek the Lord about the issue and don't force that on yourself or on somebody else until it is brutally apparent to you and another party, or you and another mentor, you and another whoever, that is what God is doing. Generally speaking, beforehand, right, Isaac? I cannot be thrust into this dialogue right now. He's
Isaac, we need to do this, bro.
No.
I'm gonna write the book. We're gonna help me. You're gonna contribute, because we need to get this stuff laid out for the saints, because this message is gonna change the world.
Well, I want no parts of that. That'll be his project. Yeah. Seek the Lord about the issue and tell him and begin to summons your teachers from the four corners of the earth, because God brought him all the way from Louisiana into Chicago, and this is what it is. All right.
Put more faith in God's ability to do it than your ability to acquire it. Okay? Put more faith in God's ability. Just trust him. He knows what's best for you, and yeah. So, my best to you.
That's the best you got is my best to you?
Well, I mean,
that was just an awkward way to end a Periscope.
I'm
all
saying
right,
my
bye.
best.
We love each other.
My best,
Right,
I want y'all
I
to
know.
have the best. I want y'all to get everything God's called
Praise
you
the
to get.
God
But
of the
don't be
Bible.
whooping and souping,
Okay, be summoned, sir. All right, I love y'all so much. Hope y'all picked up some principles or something.
Thank y'all for supporting the bishop. Thank y'all for
Yeah.
being here every Sunday. Even though y'all need to be thanking him. Y'all need to be, go ahead and going on allnations.wa.com and doing some work.
Oh,